In this lesson, we will learn to do a limited color sketch using pens, inks and watercolors. For this exercise, you will need one or more technical pens, colored inks, watercolor brushes and watercolors. I am using a set of 6 Pigma Micron pens, colored inks, artist grade watercolors and artist grade watercolor pencils. You may use any brand of technical pens and colors of your choice. Watercolors and inks will be used interchangeably during this demo. You are free to use either watercolors or inks or both. The only difference is that the inks are waterproof once dry and brighter in color. So I prefer watercolors for softer washes and inks for brighter foreground elements. I also use watercolor pencils for smaller details. If you don't have watercolor pencils, you can achieve the same result by applying watercolors or inks with a fine-tipped brush. I am assuming that you already have a light pencil sketch ready on a smooth sketch paper of 100 GSM or more thickness. I am using a semi-smooth Fabriano paper of 300 GSM thickness for this sketch. Let's begin learning the beauty of the limited color sketch. I start with sepia ink. Sepia is one of my favorite colors. If you don't have sepia ink, start with brown. The green fingers that you see here are due to my previous sketch. In this sketch, we will be using only the warm colors, that is brown, sepia, yellow and red. Later, you may try this sketch in cool shades, that is blues and greens. It's really fun trying out such different ways of sketching. Now I will go a bit faster and let you focus on the actual sketching process. When one is painting using limited range of colors, it forces us to look at values. Values are nothing but the bright and dark areas in the picture. If you understand these dark and light areas and how they are related to each other, half the battle is won. Then regardless of which color scheme you use, the picture will still come out well. When looking at dark and bright values, don't look at them individually, but in relation to the neighboring value. For example, I am painting the background foliage very dark as compared to the foreground vehicles. This will not only pop out the foreground objects, but create an illusion of light in the foreground. So, the interesting thing is, you can see light in the foreground area without me actually painting light. Let's complete the dark background first. Note that in the background too, I have kept some variation in values. Without this variation, the background will look like a continuous black mass, which in itself is not a bad effect. But here we are aiming to show some depth, so better to keep some variation. I will continue talking only after the background is complete. I will paint some foreground foliage first. Let's paint the glass pane of the tuk-tuk using the same dark shades of sepia, brown and black. Let's do the same for the car pane. Remember that these are dusty, scratched panes, so they have very little reflective values. But at the same time, they are not completely dark. So keep some white space in them to indicate that little reflection. Now I am shifting to dry brush to paint the rusty metallic body of the tuk-tuk. You may use any color like yellow, sepia, brown to paint this area. Just make sure it's a light value. If you make it dark, it will be difficult to tell it apart from the background. Keep using dry brush to indicate the rough, rusty surface of the car body. Intermittently use darker values to indicate especially ripe rusty patches. I will now use watercolor pencils to sketch some finer details. If you don't have watercolor pencils, you may use inks or watercolors with a 0 number brush. When using watercolor pencils, always wet the area where you want to use them with a clean wet brush. Watercolor pencils render very bright shades of colors. That's why watercolor pencils are quite useful in drawing attention to the foreground objects. However, keep such bright areas to a minimum in a sketch. Too many areas of interest will only confuse the viewer and make him lose interest in the overall composition. Let's add some finishing touches to the sketch and we are done.